Hello everybody. Now I just wanted to let you all know before I start this video that I did a walkthroughs and challenges of Holy Diver, and I wanted to go in almost completely blind. So that's what I did, and I've already beat the game, and you will see that walkthroughs and challenges in October. And I wanted to go in almost completely blind so that way I beat the game legitimately. And you'll find out what I did with Holy Diver in October. Now the video that I'm about to do is about Holy Diver, but it's a different thing. So I'm going to get this video started. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Video Game Chronicles. I have Holy Diver on the NES, and I did a gameplay and review on it. And I played Holy Diver for the very first time. Up until that point, I've only seen screenshots from this game. I never played this game, and I went in almost completely blind. And then of course I did a walkthroughs and challenges on it this month. And I'm already done with that. And that will be shown in October. The one thing that I did notice, however, is I found out that I have Holy Diver on one of my emulators, most noticeably the one for the Wii. And later, of course, I ended up putting in a couple of more emulators that have Holy Diver, and that's just because in an upcoming video I will show you the best option to play Holy Diver on an emulator. Because what happens if you can't afford Holy Diver? What happens if you can't afford this? Or afford a Famicom version, which is up there in price? Because when you play Holy Diver on an emulator, you might notice this, or this, or even this. That is right, folks. If you are playing Holy Diver on an emulator, you are going to notice glitches. And I'm going to explain why Holy Diver is problematic on an emulator today on this episode of the Video Game Chronicles. Wow, I was surprised about how Holy Diver was on an NES emulator. I didn't think that any NES game, or NES ROM for that matter, would be problematic on an NES emulator. I thought all NES ROMs would work on an NES emulator, even Famicom for that matter. Was I wrong? Holy Diver is one of those NES ROMs that is problematic on certain NES emulators. And one of those NES emulators is the FCEUX. And of course, I wasn't sure if I had an NES ROM of Holy Diver on an NES emulator that I use quite a bit, and surprisingly enough, I did have it, and it was on my Wii. And of course I got quite a bit of NES emulators on my Wii, and when I checked the FCE Ultra GX and tested out Holy Diver, After doing my walkthroughs and challenges, I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. That is how it is through the FCEUX. And the FCE Ultra GX is the same emulator. Most of the YouTube videos of Holy Diver that are walkthroughs were from emulators. Most of the people that played Holy Diver were using the same emulator. Even Mike Matai was using the same emulator instead of original hardware, since he did have the game. He was most likely using the FCEUX emulator. That is because while he was playing the game, he noticed graphic glitches. And that is because Holy Diver is problematic on an NES emulator. So that is proof that Mike Matai was playing it on an NES emulator rather than on official hardware. However, not all NES emulators have that problem. The NES emulator Nestopia has the game running properly on newer versions of the software. Nestopia is one of the best emulators to play Holy Diver. Now the video that you are seeing is how it should look and how it should not look. The FCEUX emulator is showing you how it should not look, and the Nestopia emulator is showing you how it should look. And you can see the clear difference between the two. The FCEUX emulator is how it should not be emulated, while the Nestopia emulator, the newest version, is showing how Holy Diver should be emulated. This is how it should be done. It should be done this way, how Nestopia is doing it, and I hope someday with newer versions of the FCEUX that newer versions emulate Holy Diver properly. However, if you are playing Holy Diver on an older Nestopia emulator, the results are far more problematic, as there are tons more graphical glitches than you will find when you play Holy Diver on the FCEUX emulator. The game becomes unplayable. Now there's a huge reason why there are graphical glitches when you play Holy Diver on an NES emulator. And that is because IRIM installed a mapper for Holy Diver. It's called the 78 mapper, and as a result, there are tons of graphical glitches when you play on certain emulators. However, there is a way to actually patch your ROMs of Holy Diver so that way they can play on an NES emulator without any graphical glitches whatsoever. This patch is called the MMC1 hack, and it's available at this website. And you can download this patch, and if you have software for it, you can actually patch your NES ROMs of Holy Diver so that way you can play Holy Diver properly on an NES emulator. But please be advised that not all emulators work with these patched versions of Holy Diver. I've tried, especially the FCEUX emulator. It definitely does not work. I tried my best. But besides that emulator, additional emulators that you can find on the internet will work with these patched versions of Holy Diver. Not all of them do though. Please be advised. Now there is a translated version of Holy Diver that you can download on the internet and play on an NES emulator. However, If you are playing it through the Nestopia emulator, it will not function properly. However, the MMC1 hack patch fixes this problem, and you can play the translated version of Holy Diver on Nestopia without any graphical glitches whatsoever. However, the translated version, patched or not, will not work properly on the FCEUX, as it displays the same graphical glitches that you find on the Famicom ROM of Holy Diver. However, I don't really recommend that you download the translated version of Holy Diver, since Holy Diver is English friendly as it is, and you can easily play Holy Diver on any NES emulator without any translation whatsoever. Here were the final results of the two most popular emulators on the internet for NES and Famicom. And the clear winner is Nestopia. It wasn't even close. Newer versions worked with 3 of the 4 ROMs of Holy Diver I tested. The only ROM that doesn't work is the non-patched translated version, but that is fixable thanks to the MMC1 hack patch. The FCEUX simulator is the loser because it still doesn't improve with newer versions and still has the same problems with Holy Diver to this day. All 4 ROMs had the same problem and none worked perfectly. The only ROM that works better than on Nestopia is the non-patched translated ROM. That's the only ROM that is better on FCEUX. But that's about it. However, I'm not done with NES emulators. Nestopia might not be the best option for you. Besides, I tested out more NES emulators. Sadly, I have to save it for another episode. I will say though, I learned much more about when I played Holy Diver on the FCEUX and FCE Ultra GX emulators, that not all NES ROMs work properly on certain NES emulators. I was glad that I played Holy Diver on official hardware, because if I had did a full walkthrough using the FCE Ultra GX emulator, I would have had a problem with beating the final boss. The good news is, not all emulators have this problem. Thanks to me having an official NES copy of Holy Diver, I was able to test out the 2 most popular NES emulators and found that at least one of them played Holy Diver perfectly, as if you were playing the game on official hardware. Newer versions of Nestopia were able to do that. Hopefully, newer versions of FCEUX will play Holy Diver without glitches in the near future. So now you know that Holy Diver is much more problematic on an NES emulator. And you also know that there's a patch to actually get your NES ROMs of Holy Diver to work on an NES emulator. It doesn't always work like with the FCEUX, but it definitely does work with Nestopia. So if you ever wanted to play Holy Diver with that patch, you can definitely do so. The patch does work completely. And even though it does not work with every single NES emulator, you can definitely patch up your NES ROMs to get Holy Diver to play, and without the glitches that I showed during this video. So thank you all for watching, everybody, and the patch will be down below in the description box, so that way if you had problems with certain NES emulators that play Holy Diver with these glitches, the patch will definitely work. But make sure you have that one particular program that will patch up these ROMs, so that way you'll be able to play Holy Diver without no graphic glitches whatsoever. But I do want to let you all know that next time I'm going to be testing out quite a bit of emulators, and it was tons of emulators that I tried, and I got surprising results. You'll find that out next time, so you don't want to miss that, because there's quite a bit of emulators that definitely worked with every single non and patched versions of the Famicom and translated versions. You'll find that out next time. So if you like this video, please subscribe and hit that like button, and I will catch you next time. Happy gaming.